Well, we're on and we're back together. We've been apart, Joe and I, for over a week. It's been such a strain being apart. We're back and we're doing a special YouTube duo appearance. Hi, everybody. Joe Chaffee here, and our regular evening live stream. Mr. Rao joining us. Had the good fortune, Joe, of being off during that horror last week.
I meant to ask you, did anything happen while I was away last week?
Yeah. Well, it was
significance or whatever.
Actually, I was, I really was kind of I was waiting for you to get back because, when you're off, and I seldom am between everything I do,
yeah.
But when you're off, you kind of have a slightly different perspective than you do when you're actually on. And I'm curious because you and I, we sit across from each other, but we've been so busy we really didn't spend too much time talking about this today. So I'm kind of curious as to what your perspective was while all of this was happening.
I got to tell you, Joe, I was exceedingly angry. My wife and I was, as you just mentioned, on Thursday of last week. I was at home. I'm not often at home when there's a significant weather event. But I was, and I called my wife out, and I said, this is not good. She said, what do you mean? The road in front of our house, you normally could see telltale stripes when the road is treated in advance of a storm. No stripes.
You're talking about now Wednesday night of last week.
I'm talking about Wednesday night and Thursday into Thursday.
Okay. I'll tell you my story about it, but go ahead.
Up until the first snowflakes were falling, there was nothing done to my road. And I said, this is not good. And as it turned out, it seems to me that most DOTs, most municipalities in the tri-state area did exactly the same thing, which just blows my mind because you and I, leading up to the storm, we mentioned number one, it's the first one of the year.
Right.
Number two, it's like spring training for many. Nobody is used to driving on any kind of frozen precipitation. I saw the mayor of New York and several other politicians say, well, it was much more than what they told us they were going to be. What they said it was going to be changing over to plain rain or whatever, blah, 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 blah.
What two words did we use in our discussions those 2 days before you went off? Upside surprise.
Right.
And that there was room for an upside surprise here.
But the thing is, it doesn't matter if there was more snow. Initially, when the first bit of snowfall, and it was cold that day.
Yes.
It was in the 30s. Every single snowflake was going to stick immediately. Immediately, my road in front of my house was coated within 15 or 20 minutes. And that's dangerous because I live up on a hill and people were fishtailing all that. I said, why? Why didn't they treat the roads?
I have a theory about this. First off,
of course, I know what the mindset was. The mindset was, oh, they're calling for a little bit of snow, but then it's going to get washed away by the rain. So let's not dip into the finances.
I think it's actually a little bit more than that.
Okay.
And here's my theory, and you can ask the audience to verify this in their own towns. When the winter weather advisory goes up, as some of the snowplow guys that I talked to have told me and reminded me because I had forgotten this, is that once the advisory goes up, they have to go out and salt and spread. But I bet you most municipalities, including the big ones, budget their snow for December, January, February, and March. They don't budget out for November.
Right.
And I think what probably happened was they had to make, because with the amounts that we forecasted, even though they wound up being double or more in some places, the amounts that we forecasted, if this were during those winter snow months, when I left here Wednesday night, the roads here in southern Westchester County would have already been brined.
Right.
And they weren't.
Right.
When I came in Thursday morning at noon, before the snow even started, the roads would have been brined. They weren't. Okay.
Right.
In fact, the construction crews on the Hutchinson River Parkway, they're doing bridge construction there. I figured there wouldn't be any traffic because there wouldn't be anybody doing any work in anticipation from the snow. No, they were out there.
Oh,
so my theory is that they looked at it. They said, you know what? It's going to probably change to rain. We don't budget for November. That means we have to authorize overtime. I don't know if the municipalities were willing to make that decision on their budgets.
Right.
That's what I think
and you're
it
probably
was.
right. I think it was a money issue.
Yeah.
It was an absolute money issue. So in your opinion, no matter what happened, they weren't going to be out there. They just weren't. And the thing is also...
But they were out there last night in 45-degree temperatures on I-95, salting in front of me and having, boulders of salt bouncing off my car. And I'm wondering, what are they doing out here?
Right.
Why? There was no... It wasn't even remotely close for them to... I mean, what were they salting for Albany? And if Timothy Veltman is on, I don't know how much you guys got, or Raymond, I don't know what you got on the Capitol. You're already saying they busted on the advisory for the Capital District because this system, did you wind up getting more or less? Coating to an inch, okay? And they were going for, maybe 3 or 4 up there.
Right.
So, yeah, I think it was a conscious decision made and said, look, we're not spending the overtime here if it's going to be something that should change to rain quick. And they gambled on a rush hour. They gambled on... quick melt. I don't know who came up with the idea that it was only going to stick on the grass when it was so cold and we were in the 20s the night before.
Right.
I mean, that was just nuts.
It's nuts. Absolutely. You could tell that that ground was very cold, and even if it did get briefly into the mid and upper 30s on Thursday afternoon as the storm was beginning, you just knew that after just a few minutes the snow was going to start accumulating.
Right.
But the thing is also here at FiOS 1 News, we had put out including the New York City metropolitan area, and that was admittedly another thing I heard. Well, they made last minute updates or whatever. Who cares?
What are we supposed to do?
Right?
What are we supposed to do?
Right.
Not make last minute updates?
But for New York City, we had 2 to 4 inches of snow for the initial shot. Now, 4 inches or anything approaching 4 inches in mid-November is so unusual, so anomalous. In fact, I went back over the records. I don't know if you saw it on my Facebook page. I found the New York Times. I posted the New York Times front page, 1882, November the 29th, 1882. 7 inches of snow. That was probably the heaviest snowfall still in the record books, as opposed to what we went through last. But still, that is so incredibly unusual.
Yeah.
And still, they didn't do it. They didn't do it.
Once every 10. It's a once in every 10-year event. You roughly, when you look at 1 inch snowfalls.
1 inch snowfalls. This was like a once in 75.
Right. This was a 6 inch.
But even a 4 inch snowstorm is very unusual too.
Sure. And it was the earliest we've ever seen a 6 inch snowfall in New York City.
15th of November.
There was a foot up in Poughkeepsie, up the Hudson Valley.
Right.
Long Island, it was basically a 2 inch along the coast. Up to 5 inches inland north of the expressway, northern Nassau, northwestern Suffolk County. I had 5 inches at my house.
Right.
Would you have 10?
No, 7.4. All
right,
7.4. That's the we sent that out to the National Weather Service.
Here's an interesting possible stat, and I'm going to see if Anthony, or if you're on tonight, Anthony being my resident statistician, see if you can check this out for me. But one of my Facebook buddies pointed out the combination of a 6 inch snowfall in the month of November in New York City, and a day where you're going to have temperatures down under 20 and 15.
Right.
To have those two things happen in New York City is probably you may have to go back to the mini ice age to find it. So I'd be curious when the last time you had a combination. We could even scale it back. Let's say if it was, say, a 3 inch snowfall or a 4 inch snowfall, and a temperature under 20 or a temperature under 15, just for laughs, because I know the 15 is very rare. Even under 20 is rare, because those would be record lows.
Right.
But and for that part of November, so it was such an anomaly. We're probably likely not to see it again.
You'd like to say that.
We'd like to say that. All right.
But it gets me upset that the politicians once again jump on us.
I know the tire treads of that bus were really,
And it was just whole scale bust every which. Not a bust. Well, a bust to some degree in the forecasting, but just a complete bust. By people who are supposed to keep us safe.
I thought the main takeaway, because look. My videos, the videos are on my library, and they stay on my library. My Facebook videos are on my Facebook page, so they're there. They have the Joe and Joe show on them both. You can go back, both the days. I don't know if we did it that Monday or Tuesday, but whichever, the ones that we did do. I know we did one on YouTube. We did at least one on Facebook, and possibly 2. That we said, like we talked about before, you have the first snow of the season. It's a tough forecast for us because we haven't really been forecasting snow since last April, and the fact that it was, the drivers weren't going to remember how to drive in it, and that there was room for an upside surprise. We emphasize those four things very, very strongly.
Right.
I mean, clearly, they don't come to us to make these decisions regarding whether to plow or not to plow, or salt or not to salt. But it is unfair to put it all on our laps.
Right.
Right. I think it's grossly unfair.
I don't know how it's done now, but I was actually one of the forecasters in the 80s who used to provide the forecast to the New York Sanitation Department, who did plow, and indeed are still doing that, plowing the roads, treating the roads in advance of a snowstorm. And those days we used a Twix machine. Remember those things?
Sure, I remember.
Twix machine. And I don't know how it's done now, but if it were done the same way I was doing it back in the 80s, I used to put out, not just a forecast. I used to go boom, 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 and I would have put it right at the top. I said, this is going to be the first storm of the season. You better get, the roads sanded or salted or whatever, treated, because it's going to get slick, it's going to get slippery, temperatures in the 30s are going to stick in it. I would have done all of that. And who knows?
Again, I go back to the budget question. I really think that was a conscious decision that a lot of municipalities made and just said, look, we don't budget for November, so we're not going to authorize the overtime for something that's going to wind up.
It would have been fun, though, because if they had started to say things like what the mayor said, oh, we were surprised, all of that. We always used to keep the copies of the Twix messages. I would go to the New York Post or the Daily News or whatever. That's all that has to happen, right? The next day, we probably would lose the contract, but I get a bit of satisfaction to.
I get it. All right, so you know what? Let's move forward because we've got a lot to talk about tonight, and I think we can start by the first round of changes that are coming with this Arctic front that is moving through. And by the way, I'm surprising you here with something. This is, I don't know if you've ever used this. I found this. It's on a WPC site. It's an interactive surface map. And it's got all this. Not only does it have all the surface maps, but I know that you love to go back and pull dates.
Right.
Which you remember a lot better than I do.
Right.
When you pull those dates from now on, we could pull up the surface map as long as it was after 1985.
Okay.
So just remember that.
All right.
But anyhow, this is our surface map. Let's see if it's the latest one because the new one should be out, and it's not out yet. Okay. So, we've had our system. This system that went through to overnight and this morning wound up being so much weaker than it was modeled a couple of days ago, and sparked fear in some that they salted roads at 48 degrees. Well, that low's moved away. Now the Arctic front is showing up now. With this low that is in northern Minnesota, and behind it is the real push, the push of very, very cold air that's going to be moving into the east for late tomorrow night, Thursday, into Friday morning. Right. This is a very, very cold air mass.
Indeed. And the one thing that bothers me about this system coming in is that we are mentioning the possibility for snow showers or flurries or whatever, but there's also the odd snow squall that might occur in a few places.
We can pull up, I think the 3-kilometer NAM might be a good model to use in this situation because this is, a little bit on the convective side.
Right.
So we could take a look at that because it's the one, it did kind of play that up. So we'll bring that up front and center here. So, here's our weather system off the coast of Maine that's moving away. And now the Arctic front is going to approach. You have that low that's heading for the St. Lawrence Valley. You wake up the lake effect snows, and you can see there's that almost east-west band that drops southward late tomorrow afternoon into tomorrow evening. If that holds together, I think you're right. There'll be at least some snow showers and maybe the odd burst of heavy snow that lasts about 5 or 10 minutes and maybe whitens up the ground in some spots.
We made sure because it's less likely, let's say, for coastal New Jersey or Long Island, but up in the Hudson Valley where my zone is on FiOS 1 News, I did make a point to mention that there is the chance, however small, that indeed it's kind of like the equivalent of a summer shower. If you drive along on a hot, warm summer day in the afternoon, all of a sudden you get a downpour of rain. for a few minutes, well, just think of that as maybe snow, in which case you get a quickie coating on the roadways. You can get low visibility and almost like blizzard-like or whiteout type conditions. That's what a snow squall is, and there's always that chance when you get a punch of cold air like what we're expecting tomorrow in the afternoon and early evening of seeing something like that.
The temperatures. Now, this is going to be tricky for Thanksgiving Day because, I was looking back at the coldest Thanksgiving. A lot's going to depend on what the midnight temperature is, if that winds up being the high for the day.
Yeah.
Because if you go with the NAM, it certainly suggests this would be at midnight. It's got a 25 at Bridgeport, a 19 at Poughkeepsie, so you figure it could be, 29 or 30 in New York City. But you're not going. The daytime high on Thanksgiving Day might wind up not being much above 24 or 5, depending on one thing or another. The morning 7 a.m. temperature. At least this is the NAM 3's view. 13 at Poughkeepsie, 16 at Bridgeport, 20 for whatever Millville. I don't know if that's Millville or Philadelphia. There on the Jersey-Pennsylvania line, down in South Jersey. But this is really cold air, and you've got single digits up, not that far away either for Thursday morning. The daytime doesn't really go up much at all, maybe to 20 to 25, and then back to Friday morning when we'll be down. It doesn't go out far enough, but we'll probably be down in the teens and maybe even some single digits if the winds go dead calm.
I was thinking about 1989, but I then said, wait a minute, the snow fell on Thanksgiving Day. It was the day after Black Friday.
Well, you know what?
That was very, very cold.
We can find that. Let's take a look. So let me set the calendar. So we'll go back to 1989.
Which in itself, late November.
So that would have been November 23rd, would be Thanksgiving Day 1989.
Right. Ooh.
This is an old surface map. There's your 92 low at 40 and 65.
Right.
So let's see the preview. Let's see how this evolved. Okay, so it's a little hard to read the numbers. Let me just see what you guys can see on the screen here. The numbers aren't overly clear, but that looks like a 32 at New York City, and this was at 10 o'clock on the Wednesday, the night before. And at that point, it was probably, if I remember correctly, it probably was snowing, or just it looks like it was snowing then.
Right.
And we'll take it through the night. So this was Thanksgiving morning. You had a low in the box.
Right,
This is what we call the box, and heading for the benchmark.
Right.
Temperatures in the mid-20s. This was where a lot of forecasters at the time were not going for a whole lot of snow.
Well, there was a whole lot. I was driving. I did the 3 spinouts on the Northern State Parkway. No, going on to the Northern State Parkway from the Wantagh Parkway, and that was a scary thing. But yeah, it was snowing quite steadily in the wee hours of the morning, and then the next day, Black Friday,
right,
we had some very, very cold temperatures.
I was 11. I distinctly remember I waking up to 11 above, and then I think it went to 50 that afternoon. But it was 11 above zero because we had a clear night. The lows already pulled out. So this is at 10 o'clock. The last isobar is near Cape Cod. You've got a little bit of a high here, a little ridge that built in, and the winds just went dead calm after this.
Right.
And there it goes. So it went. This is for. We'll go to the morning map.
What is that?
That's a 5.
It's a 5.
Here, look at that. That's a 5, I guess, for Poughkeepsie. 27 in New York. I'm not sure where that is on Long Island with the 23, but that looks like it might be somewhere down on the coast. And that could even be Montauk, something out on the east end. I don't know. But yeah, that was 8. Look at that. That's incredible. And then just for laughs, 15, 18, 35. Oh, maybe it wasn't the Friday. It was the Saturday, I think, that we went to 50. And that may, as I remember, for some areas, that wound up being the biggest snow of the whole winter.
Yeah. Yeah, it was because, again, it was very cold in December, and then all of a sudden, January, February, March turned out to be way above normal. It was quite a different story at the start. Maybe it'll be this way this year.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see.
But in the meantime, we can. I just want to show everybody the latest radar, because you've got last night's precip is now in coastal Maine. You're getting some snow there, and there it is. I got it centered on the picture. And then when we go to the Great Lakes, this is the snow showers that are ahead of that the Arctic boundary that's coming up. Just to show you, elsewhere there's some shower activity well off the Florida and North Carolina coast. Actually, we even do have some showers. Looks like right around the Miami, Fort Lauderdale area. The west is going to start. The radars in the west are quiet at the moment, but they're going to start getting busy in short order as the weather systems start coming in to the west coast. So you know what? At this point, Joe, why don't we let's take a look at where all of this is going and whether we're going to be going along with it. Let's pull up the. I'm going to pull up the full U.S. view, and we'll take the GFS and take us along. And to set this up, even before we do that, to set this up, let's look at the teleconnections, because we've been looking at these teleconnections here every night for a number of nights now. And this is going forward over the next 2 weeks. It looks to me, we are going to be setting up in a blocking pattern. And we're going to be setting up in a blocking pattern with a strong ridge in the west. The Pacific North America Index actually goes to an extreme reading in terms of strength early next week and stays positive pretty much all the way into the 4th and 5th of December. And the NAO is crashed. It's going to be strongly negative right through the same time frame. I think there are going to be a couple of possibilities in that stretch for East Coast storms. Whether they turn out to be rain or snow or possibly both, that remains to be seen. I think the first one that we're dealing with early next week, that's a rain event. But the ones that are coming down the road that we're getting these storm signal dates out of, I think those have a chance with respect to getting cold air in here.
I think so too. I agree with you 100% that there is most definitely apparently a blocking pattern that is taking shape and will be with us into the first week of December. And in fact, I think, I didn't mention this because I wasn't here, but last Friday on the experimental 3 to 4 week long-range probability map from the Climate Prediction Center, they have from December 1st to the 14th for about 3/4 of the country, mostly the central eastern part of the country, below normal temperatures.
Yeah. Well,
but they also have above normal along the southeastern states, and we're either teetering on near or even slightly below normal precipitation-wise.
Well, a lot of that could depend on the strength of the block. If the block is too strong, then it might suppress everything further too far south.
Right, absolutely.
So there's always that delicate balance.
Right.
And there's going to be the question of getting cold air in, because it is transitory. We're going to see this Arctic air shot go out, so we have to kind of reestablish the cold air of it, and that may take some time. But if you watch the upper air, you can clearly see what's going on up over Greenland. You have this strengthening upper high that just builds like crazy and finds its way out toward Labrador. And the result is all across the Pacific, through the North America and out into the Atlantic, the jet stream is way south of where it normally is. And as a result, you see these weather systems kind of pivot around. They try to lift up into the block, and the block is going to try and stop that from happening.
Right.
So here's one for Monday, which has some success. But if you folks at home that are watching, let me make sure the map is centered correctly, and it is. Okay, but watch that vigorous upper low that's sitting in Missouri. Normally that would want to try to go up toward the Great Lakes and into southeastern Canada. But the upper high to the north is forcing it. It can only get so far north before it gets shunted to the east.
Squirted.
Right. Yeah. And in this case, it happens that it gets, depending on what model run you look at, it makes it up into northeast Ohio or over Lake Erie, and then the secondary low will take over, and then it translates out off the coast. But look at that next trough right behind it.
Right.
You've got multiple areas of energy, and that next trough right behind it sets something up for the last days of the month, and it's still kind of rotating around. Then you got this other one that suddenly comes out.
That thing that drops down from the Pacific Northwest all the way into Texas.
Yeah, we'll watch that again. See, there it goes.
Look at that.
I mean, that's a very vigorous system there. This is timing out for around the 1st or 2nd of December. We were talking about November 30th, December 1st, but sometimes these things can be off by a day or so. Look, the bottom line is, and Dave Toleris of Weather Risk put this out on a tweet today, and I agree. It's a very ominous look to the upper air going forward. I mean, look how blocky it is in eastern Canada here.
He was calling he sent me an instant message about 3 or 4 days ago saying that he was calling for the next major hemorrhage around the 5th or 6th of December. And
well,
we don't even have maps. At that time, we go out, the ensembles go out 360 hours. What he's calling for is something that's even beyond the ensemble time frame.
I know Dave has a reputation for being a charm school graduate.
Yeah.
But that being said, and he doesn't have, and certainly he's never been like that with me. He's always been, a gentleman with me, and but he's good with his stuff. When he sits there and he really puts his head into what's going on in the long range, so he can get his head around it a lot better than I can.
Okay.
But yeah, no, he's very good. Here's how it's going to play out on the surface. By the way, so our Arctic air. So here comes that high. I love running the atmosphere backwards. Here comes that high, big push of Arctic air into the east. Then that goes out, but it goes out east of New Jersey, so we should warm up fairly quickly.
Right.
We don't really have any snow cover on the ground anymore, so that's not going to hold it back.
It'll be less harsh on Friday. It'll be still very cold, but less harsh with less wind. So count on, let's say, 20s on Thanksgiving, around 30 for Friday, 40 or so maybe for Saturday. And with any luck, we might see some places in the tri-state area approach 50 on Sunday, which
it's possible. Well, there's all this warm air coming eastward, and you've got this what looks to be like that's almost like a long warm front that's running down from some low up in south central Canada. There's some rain with that Saturday night into Sunday morning. Then that goes out. Now here comes this low. We talked about this surface low that's going to want to try to go to the Great Lakes, but it's going to hit that block, and you get a second low that forms on the occluded front, on the point of occlusion, and that's what you see sitting there in eastern Pennsylvania.
Right.
This might be a bit of a rain and a wind producer here for the Mid-Atlantic, and particularly for parts of the Northeast for Monday.
Right.
As it goes by, like a 12-hour period where it could get pretty windy here with the southeast gale.
A sou'easter, not a
sou'easter, correct. And then that goes out, and now you've got all this energy that's coming into the west, which has been absent for quite a while, and they're finally getting some rain down into most of California. But as that energy moves east, you got this, the blocking high in southeastern Canada builds in. So you've got, this cold high that starts to spread out. And this is the late afternoon GFS's idea, and we're at December 1st with some kind of low in Georgia that runs up the coast for that first weekend in December. As I tell the folks all the time, when you're starting to look past day 6 or 7, you really have to give the model a whole lot of latitude.
Yep.
I would not necessarily expect the next run to look close to this, but it may be the general flavor of what's happening.
Right.
And the upper air is telling us that if these short waves time out and you got this blocking in place, some cold air is going to try to come back here as we get into the first days of December, and there probably will be something that follows that, the way the whole upper pattern is.
Right, and don't forget that just a few days ago there was some suggestion that we might see some frozen precipitation this weekend, and now that's all gone by the board.
Right.
So here we are talking about something like 10 days out. So again, don't...
Right, the takeaway is that the pattern is going to be favorable for something to happen. Now, whether it happens or not is going to hinge on the small-scale stuff that we really can't look at with any kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Confidence. That we really can't look at with any kind of confidence until we get inside the 7-day time frame anyway, at the very earliest.
Yeah. Problem is, at this time of year, things move too fast.
Yeah.
Things move too fast for the models. The models may tell you one thing, and then they'll say a couple of days later, we didn't take into account the speed. It's now coming a couple of days earlier. It's tough, especially as you just said, when you go like beyond 5 days. It's
very, very difficult. Okay, so here's the GFS's rainfall prediction. This is through next Wednesday, so we're looking at 2-inch plus rains and even some 2 to 4 inch liquid amounts in parts of New England. lesser amounts, but still some significant rain, precip, and it's going to be mostly rain until the cold air comes back in the Great Lakes. And the West gets pounded finally with rains all the way down to Southern California and big rains, Central and Northern California. You know, one of the things about the upper pattern, Joe, just to go back to this, is the fact that you have an alleyway here with the Pacific Jet pretty far to the south and north of Hawaii. So that's going to be sending energy into the west, but not into the northwest. This is the reason, if you look from Alaska, northwest Canada, all of this is higher than normal pressures and heights. This is your PNA at work, part of your Pacific North America index being strongly positive, because this stuff out here in the Pacific is not going into Canada, it's going way south.
Right.
And that might be a big theme of the winter with this weak El Nino,
right,
where you're going to get these systems coming along in a very strong Pacific jet, subtropical jet, and at the same time, if you've got this blocking that appears and hangs around for any kind of stretch of time, this is where if it sets up right, that you could wind up with some pretty snowy weather and some cold weather for the eastern part of the U.S.
Well, I've often heard from people who do this sort of thing, looking in the long-range patterns, and they often say that if you're going to have that, if you're a winter weather lover, if you really like snow or cold weather, and you have to have an El Nino, make sure the El Nino is a weak one. The weak El Ninos are the ones that tend to produce more in the way of cold and snow, as opposed to a moderate or especially a strong El Nino, which strong El Ninos tend to bring us more in the way of rain and also more in the way of warmer weather. And that's the thing that I've been wondering about, this forecast that NOAA put out in October about the upcoming winter season being wetter and milder than normal. I said, well, that would be true if there's going to be a strong El Nino, but even back then, it looked more like a weak El Nino or moderate to weak El Nino. So I don't know.
And almost to me, like it felt like they mailed it in. We're gonna run. I'm going through the chat now. Okay, so a collective hello to everybody. I'm gonna hopefully get to your question. I don't always succeed. It's good to see you, Raymond. I know you haven't been on for a while, and that snow report was important for us. So thanks. Let's see. Nicholas Gallo pointing out about the leaves on the ground. That was another thing with all the leaves, because they're still, most of them are still on the trees. They're going to be down, after this weekend.
Well, a couple of days before the storm last week, I was on my tractor mower trying to mulch in some of the leaves that were still on my lawn, and then came the snow, and now the snow has disappeared. And guess what? The leaves are still there.
They still are. They sure are. Hayes Balowi, I hope I pronounced that right. Thank you for the kind words. Joe and I both appreciate it. He says, I rely on you when doing DC weather. All right, good. It's good to hear. Thank you. Supreme Gamer is on, and he's on from Canada. So while that blocking pattern takes over in Supreme Gamer, we are Saskatchewan. I don't know how much snow you're going to wind. You might be in a pretty dry situation there. No snow in Saskatoon, Canada, he says, for Thanksgiving.
Wow.
Well, with the jet stream so far to the south and all these weather systems coming across the U.S. rather than coming across southern Canada, I would think that your weather's going to probably be drier than normal.
Well, it's true, too. But, I mean, like, back in October, we were commenting about the fact that it seemed like Canada, once again, was loading up with very cold conditions, and you would have thought, well, by Thanksgiving, certainly, most every place would have some snow. So Saskatoon, enjoy your snowless. Well, they already had their Thanksgiving.
That's
there,
right.
So.
Robert Hurley, snow squalls for Wednesday evening.
Well,
we can reiterate that because if you joined late, we talked about it earlier. But go ahead. We
mentioned again that this punch of cold air with this impending cold front coming in later tomorrow certainly holds the possibility of a few hit or miss snow showers, heavier snow showers, maybe even an isolated squall. And the 3-kilometer NAM doesn't outright say, yeah, that's what's going to happen, but it seems to have some suggestions of that. And considering what happened last Thursday, we might as well mention it now and put it out there just to say, yeah, this is what we were, mentioning. There's that possibility.
Anthony Orr says the lowest temperature recorded in November, and it happened on the 30th of the month, when you think about it, is 7. in New York City. So we're not getting there.
Right. Was that the that may very well have been the 1882 storm, the snow that fell on the 29th, and on the 30th, the day after, they may very well have dropped because of maybe radiation or maybe cold air advection or the snow on the ground or whatever. And by the way, the interesting thing about that, Joe, is that back then in 1882, I guess it was the last Thursday of the month was considered to be Thanksgiving.
Right.
Thanksgiving in 1882 was November 30th, and I believe Franklin Roosevelt.
Right, he changed it to the 4th Thursday.
Right, because of the Depression, and he wanted to bring in shopping a little bit sooner. So
it worked.
It worked.
Scott Briller, because Anthony wasn't able to, was digging on my question. Scott says he found a November 1938 with an 8-inch snowstorm in a couple of days in the 20s. Yeah, I'm just wondering about days with a snowfall of 6 inches and temperature under 20.
My mom tells me that she remembers my grandfather taking her to the Thanksgiving Day parade, Macy's Thanksgiving, when she was about 6 years old. So that would be 1938. Sorry, Mom, I'm revealing how old you are. But she said it was snowing on that Thanksgiving, so that might very well be.
That might be it, 1938.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anthony Orr. Thank you, Scott Briller, for that. So, I got a great audience because you just throw the stuff out there and they know.
They go to work. They save us time.
Let's see. Do any of you think, asks Israel de Fruitiger, there's a heavy snow shower that coats the ground? Oh, because he was in Lakewood, New Jersey.
Right.
So Israel, I think, he lost it to rain pretty quickly the other day, so I don't think he saw much. So he's hoping that the snow squall makes it to where he is. It's always a dice roll with snow squalls, Israel. Sometimes they make them. My rule with snow squalls are when you forecast them, they don't happen. When you don't forecast them, they happen. And Scott Briller pointing out that Dr. Judah Cohen, has been hot and heavy on his tweets lately with regards to the weather going into the first couple of weeks of December. He's pointing out all the stuff that's been going on in the stratosphere with the polar vortex. This is kind of playing out according to plan. Okay, so Rick 8013 says I should look at the parallel GFS. The parallel GFS and the Icon model were two models that correctly had the snow system for Thursday about 4 days before. Then they lost it.
Then they lost it.
All right. But there were a couple of runs where it had mostly snow from central New Jersey northward. So the parallel, we wants to look at the le GFS de parallel or something.
Now you're doing the Canadian thing, the CMC or whatever.
Le gem.
Le gem.
Le gem can be a gem sometimes. That model, it can be. It has its good days and its bad days. When it's bad, it's really bad, and when it's good, it's really good. And it does hit home runs every once in a while. Yeah. But among the models, it's probably the one that's least, how shall we say, respected.
Yeah.
All right, so let's look at Le Parallel de GFS.
You go to that, and if it's going for the big storm, you say, well, that's typical for that.
Well, this goes out to 384, and we have the 18Z. So I'm just going to back it up. Well, it's way overdone already, even with the system for tonight, but no matter. So here's your Arctic front. It goes by, high. System for Sunday. That goes out. Here's your low for Monday. Gets to about Detroit. Holds on to the primary probably way too long before it disappears. So I would disagree with the parallel GFS right off the bat with that. Now here comes for the end of next week. Okay, so that's Thursday. Now we're into December 1st. So there's your low. Cold air kind of spreading out across the top. All right, I see what, again, this is due to probably how it sees the upper air. And, we're going way out here. So you know what? We're doing this for laughs, okay, more than anything else, because we know it's going to be different for the next 7 or 8 days and how the models evolve. But so that's how it kind of handles the upper low. And the GFS, totally different. Okay, so So look, it's as much a possibility as any of the possibilities you're going to see, and you're not going to see anything that's going to be remotely close to reality now or through the weekend, and maybe through a good chunk of next week.
Right.
Agreed?
Agreed.
Okay,
Absolutely.
good. But we showed you the parallel GFS, which, you know, when they ask, I always like to deliver. I just lost Timothy Veltman. Sorry. What's the difference between the GFS and the FV3 GFS? Mike Azara asks. They call the FV3 GFS the parallel GFS. What happens is when they do these upgrades, and I lost track of whenever they did the last GFS upgrade is done. After the upgrade is done, they run both models simultaneously, and they probably
and at the same time.
Yes, thank you.
Right.
And they they use the opportunity, and they'll do that for a couple of months. So they'll tweak maybe the new the parallel one. They'll do whatever tweaks they need to do with it, and when it's ready, it will become the main. It will switch and become the primary model, and the parallel disappears because now it's the primary model, and then the GFS that had been running is retired. Right. So that's really the difference. They're running them side by side so they can fix whatever little things they need to fix along the way.
Jim Witt, who has been in the weather forecasting business for like over a half a century, and who actually taught, I think it was at Lakeland School in Westchester County, kids weather. The kids used to actually come in early before school started and made their own forecast, and they actually had some of the equipment that meteorologists use. And one of his students actually has gone all the way over to the NMC.
Right.
And apparently, according to Jim, has been working on improving the GFS. And I'm going to write a letter to Jim and say, if you still are in contact with that guy, could you ask him stop fiddling with the GFS? Because the GFS these last
it's been a mess.
It's been a total and complete mess.
Happy Thanksgiving to Anna Maria Passaretti. Thank you very much, and the same to you, Frank Sorolla, and we've got John Corner on from Northern Ireland. They're going to get hi to you and welcome to my YouTube show. Does the above normal snowpack in Canada make shots of cold air colder for the U.S.?
Well, yeah, I think a classic example is what's going to happen in the next couple of days. I mean, it's that in order for you to see the temperatures as bitter as what we're going to see or experience from late tomorrow through tomorrow night, Thursday, and on into Friday, that cold air has to come from someplace. It's anomalously cold when it gets down to our neck of the woods. I can only imagine how cold it is up. I've not looked at the temperatures in central and northern Canada, but I'm sure it's like a real icebox up there.
Well, we had record early snowpack in North America and Canada last year, and that record was broken this year apparently. We're even higher than last year. So it kind of makes sense. If you get snowpack early in Canada, it's probably going to mean for an early onset of colder temperatures in the U.S.
Right.
We've seen that 2 years in a row. I bet you if you go back, you'll find there's probably a connection there. And the reverse would be true. In years where there's lack of snow cover growth in Canada, it probably delays the onset of winter. Your John Corner, hang on 1 second. I just want to acknowledge Timothy Veltman. I'm glad we didn't put you to sleep yet. John Trabacchino, happy Thanksgiving. He wishes both of us happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to you. And by the way, happy Thanksgiving to everybody that's on board. Okay, so let's take a look at Le Model and go to Europe, because our way of going to Europe by doing it this way is a whole lot cheaper than getting on a plane and then doing a currency exchange for the euro. So let me bring up now with all that blocking going on. It's certainly impacting the weather. You can see the strength of the upper high that's over Scandinavia and out into the Atlantic toward Greenland. Pretty wrapped up upper low in northern France. I just want, I was watching this yesterday. It's odd to see. We're so used to you and I seeing, stuff moving generally west to east.
Right.
Every once in a while you get these sort of weird things that happen where they move in opposite directions, usually in the spring or in the fall. But I'm watching this here as we're deep into autumn, almost to winter, and you watch these upper lows actually moving backwards.
Right.
To the northwest.
Retrogressing.
But retrograding, correct, and doing that underneath the block. And going forward in time, the pattern kind of normalizes in the upper air a bit as we go forward. So let's see what this looks like on the surface. I know one of my regulars who follows me, and I speak to from time to time, up in England, he's weather savvy, and he was talking about it getting cold and snowy maybe into early December for England and Ireland. But here we are in the short range, at least. You've got these lows that kind of whip around, but it doesn't look like anything too crazy here.
Right.
Pretty big storm down there near Sicily.
Yeah.
Bringing some snows into Hungary, Romania, maybe even into northern Greece. It does. Here's where it probably starts to turn colder, at least into Europe, late in the period. The model was doing this yesterday. You're starting to see some cold air moving down from northern Greenland to Norway and Sweden, but it doesn't really quite make it that far to the west, at least not through this long-range period. But I'll bet you this is going to change quite a bit.
Not quite
as well.
Not quite the beast from the east yet.
No, that was very interesting to watch evolve. I've learned so much by popping the European side of the equation, because we really don't pay that much attention to it here. There's no reason for us to, unless someone asks. And we're always, if you guys ask for it, we will try to put it up there.
I remember a forecaster at WCBS Radio back in the 60s and 70s, Gordon Barnes, and he a couple of times on the air, he always used to say, he says, "I just don't look at North America. I look at the whole northern hemisphere, because everything is attached to, like the left bone is created."
But years ago, it was tough to even get maps of Europe. You were, or the other side of the world. Maybe you'd got a map like once a day.
He used to, apparently, from what I heard, somebody by the name of Harvey Brandenburg used to work for him at CBS or whatever. He said he was crazy. He'd get whatever he could grab on teletype. Remember those?
And just plot it.
And just plot it. Have him plot it.
Mm-hmm.
Gordon never did anything. He would tell people, do this, do that.
Let's see. Bobby Livingsworth says it looks like early December cold, but late next month we go back to warm conditions. I have no idea.
Is he simply saying that just to balance things out?
I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? I'm not a long range guy. I never have been. I stay focused inside the 2-week time frame, and usually inside 10 days. But who knows what's going to happen? The longevity of the blocking pattern. Usually that's not for more than 2 to 4 weeks. I would expect that there would be some sort of pause along the way.
Danny Davis from Australia?
Danny Davis from Australia. He's been in couple of nights in a row. I actually was pulling up the maps from Australia, and
so it's tomorrow at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning there already, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the international date line throws me off. Yeah. We should be on one standard, same time everywhere. Make life easy. Oh, and he says they don't have Thanksgiving until they have Thanksgiving in May.
Okay.
All right, that's good. So we'll remember to come down in May. And
turkey or kangaroo?
Yeah. What's the is it turkey? Is it kangaroo? Is it
koala bear?
No, really, seriously, I have no idea. Ethan Kerr, what do you think about the Category 3 hurricane being modeled to make landfall in North Carolina next July? It might be to the little bit to the right of North Carolina. That's what I think about it.
What would be the name?
Yeah, exactly. Mirtha Gunter, who watches from Western North Carolina, hello to you. Kenneth Simmons, do you see any Miller A snowstorms this year?
Before you answer that, I don't know anything about Miller A, Miller B, all these different ratings or all of these classifications. I just know what the storm looks like or whatever. I never have been able to get my head wrapped around.
No, I'm Joe. I'm on the same page with you. I kind of look at it the same way. I look at it. And it's not really important to me, whether it's a Miller A or a Miller B or whatever, or a Miller Ale,
right.
Although that's preferable.
Right.
But no, seriously, we just kind of don't look at it that way.
Who's Larry? I forget his last name. Used to do the weather on Channel 9. Cosgrove.
Cosgrove.
Now, if you want to...
He's very technical.
That's
He's very technical, yes. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with being technical, but it's just not our thing. Nat gas spares are dying. We're praying for a warm-up. Well, I mean, nat gas has had a 50% move in the last couple of weeks. Now, some of that, by the way, Jamie, is being driven by demand overseas because they're exporting liquid natural gas now in big numbers. They opened up a bunch of ports along the Gulf Coast, and they're able to finally export, LNG, liquid natural gas. And Poland, I was reading last week that Poland, is going to be, basically getting more of their natural gas from us than they're getting from Russia. So like there's just this political economic chess game that's going on, and nat gas, which has been pretty much $3 for the last 10 years, has now suddenly jumped 50% in the last 4 weeks, and keeps wanting to go higher. So that's and weather's going to be a driver if we really get into a really, really cold pattern that lasts for a while. Scott Briller, how cold will it be on Thanksgiving? It will be so cold that only 14 days last winter, December through March, had highs in the 20s. There you go. That puts it in perspective. It's very much an anomaly to see a day in November where temperatures don't get out of the 20s, even not getting out of the 30s. Maybe that happens a bit more, but 20s is really pushing it, and Thursday is going to stand out. It may wind up being depending on where the high of the day is, if you use the daytime high, and even the low, because it's possible that the low at midnight Thursday night will be lower than the low Thursday morning. Depending on one thing or another. So we got to wait to do the math. I think it's going to probably wind up being at least in the top 5, and possibly even in the top 3.
And somebody says he
was. Sorry.
He said Gordon Barnes. We were making a reference, and somebody said he was on WCBS TV. Yeah, he was on. Back in those days, CBS, the people who did the weather on the radio also did the weather on television, which is not the case anymore. So, unfortunately.
I thought the air people at at Channel 2 were doing the radio end of it also.
Now.
Every once in a while, or at least they were relatively recently.
You will hear every once in a while Lonnie Quinn, and some of the TV people. Yeah, you're right. Sometimes they've got a very strange deal at CBS. They have Craig Allen, who they've had for like over 3 decades.
Right.
But when Craig is not able to do it, they have AccuWeather. But when AccuWeather is not on and Craig is not on, sometimes they'll call upon the people from the television side of things to do. It's
crazy.
Crazy.
I had we just had, who was it? Onyx Gaming. I was going to say OxyClean. No, Onyx Gaming. He wants us to look at Hawaii. This will be the last request because we both have to go at this point. Hawaii, at least, with that, the jet stream in the Pacific pretty far to the south, but it is north of them. I mean, there are some occasional showers, but we don't see any kind of storm. See, at the very top of the map, you can see a storm moving across along 35 north, but they all go pretty much north of Hawaii. Then what is this? There's some kind of low in the long range out in the tropics that appears and disappears.
In the wintertime, they have what are called Kona storms in Hawaii.
Okay.
And they tend to, sometimes they sit there for a while near the Hawaiian Islands and give prolonged periods of unsettled weather. So if you go to Hawaii, I know a lot of people like to go in the wintertime, but the winter is not really the best time to go. The best time to go is July, August, because they have that big high pressure subtropical high northeast of them. They get the northeast trade winds, and that's when they have their best weather. Not so great sometimes during the winter season because, again, of these what are called Kona disturbances.
All right, you know what? It's coming up on 8:25 Eastern time, so I think we can. I'm going to put an end to this.
No,
but
it's only been on for 54 minutes and 18 seconds.
I know, almost a lifetime here. But let me just do a little bit of shameless self-promotion, if you're okay with that.
Where am I going?
Correct. So let me just let everybody know that if you are in the New York, New Jersey, Long Island, northern New Jersey, actually, New York City, Long Island, Southern Connecticut, Hudson Valley, and you have an Android device, you can download my free weather app on Google Play and that's what it looks like on Google Play. And here's the link as I put it up on the chat board. As I said, it's absolutely free. There it is. You see, all free. And
free is good.
I installed it on my on my phone as well. So do check that out. There will be an iPhone version of this as soon as Apple gets off their semi-soft rear end and approves it, which I'm hoping comes any day now. We have submitted it to them. Like I said, hopefully they'll do it with. I would like to have them do it before the end of the month, so it's out there if we wind up having some kind of storm activity for next week. And the other thing I want you to consider, if you would, is my weather platform on Patreon, and that is so you could get weather posts, exclusive live streams for Patreon members only, and a whole bunch of other things that we will be doing and adding along the way. So if you are interested in that, that is a subscription site, and it's all of $2 a month, which is the price of a cup of coffee. And it's a if you're into weather, I think this really works because it's all weather people on there, and you don't have the flat earthers, the geoengineers, the harpists, and all the rest of it. So we've got them separated out, and they won't pay $2 a month to join up.
When
do I sleep? Yeah, rarely. I have everything kind of worked out, so as long as I've got my pattern of doing things,
okay,
I'm okay with it.
All right.
So check that out, and the link is on the chat board as well. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's going on, and there isn't. So you and I, are we going to repeat this again at 9:15 tonight on Facebook?
We are. Why not?
Okay,
if you're into it.
So for those of you who want to see this all over again, we will be doing a live Facebook on the Joe and Joe Weather Show at 9:15 on my Facebook page, Meteorologist Joe Chaffee. So check that out at 9:15.
And the next time we're together after tonight is not till next Monday.
Correct, and if there's a storm on the table, we'll have you back on.
Whatever.
By the way, I reached out to Andy Gregorio to Skype yesterday. I haven't heard back from him, so I'm figuring maybe with the Thanksgiving holiday, he's got his hands full. But we'll bring him down from a meteorologist up in upstate New York, in the Albany area for many years. And we'll bring him on Skype, and we'll talk to him about what he thinks about all of this.
And we never heard from Tropical Tidbits.
Still haven't heard back from Levi, but Levi's been dealing with server issues and upgrades and everything else. So maybe when things come down, I'll shoot him an email again, see if we can get him on. He knows his tropical meteorology, so I think that would be he'd be very interesting. Even now, we're out of the season, obviously, but perhaps he could talk about how this all impacts.
10 more days to go, and the season's over officially in the Atlantic basin. So.
And good riddance.
And good riddance.
All right, I'm just trying to think. So here's the deal for tomorrow. As far as the live stream goes for tomorrow, it will be early in the day. I probably will do it maybe around midday, because I've got a family thing to do tomorrow night. And as far as Thanksgiving Day is concerned, I'll probably do a live stream sometime later in the evening. Again, depending on what's going on.
After the March of the Wooden Soldiers.
After March of the Wooden Soldiers, soldiers, correct. So just kind of be flexible here. And I know that many of you probably have your Thanksgiving plans. So if you wind up not being with us over the next couple of days, have a happy and joyous Thanksgiving to you and your family. And we'll see you when you get back. And again, tomorrow, if we live stream on YouTube, it'll probably be around the middle of the day. Have a great evening, everybody. Thanks for coming on, as always. Yes. And we'll see you, maybe we'll see you tomorrow. And we'll see you tonight on Facebook.
Right.